see it's 10 there.
Please, please. Your sidekick is a Yeah. Yeah. The system is great.
Well, I plan on doing that every year. I've only done it once.
I think it's like that last Sunday in May, in April. This year it was because and I got all the time water. Well, last year the water was pretty high. Well, except,
But maybe not the best thing, my grand.
if it's the 26th of April, that's when the county.
Or the southeastern part of that, they need to pray.
But that's maybe what. Anyway, I have your email, so I'll let you know.
Okay, I'll say, oh no, don't put me under that pressure. My days of learning to
We just have a couple more of these. Thank goodness. People stopped using these as a favorite chair. I think I've ever seen a chair wasted.
Yeah, I get an 8.
Rita, do you know Mike Farrell? She's a nurse at the Bright Clinic, and he's a member of the co-op. Are you? I thought he said.
put you on the spot, you get tired, and you just hit some of the Trish's in Barrow. I talked to the spot. Folks, let's go ahead and get started. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thanks to all of you for coming tonight. We all look forward to hearing about the opposition for such a great seat as the 7th CD. All looking forward to one day taking that back in the Democratic Party possession. So we have two excellent speakers to show us the way tonight. We've canceled our Barron County Dems meeting, which is generally on the third Thursday, and instead we'll kind of have our meeting tonight. We don't have any particular business. I just have a few odds and ends to go through, and then I'm going to turn the program over to Brianna Stanley with Citizen Action. In terms of logistics, there are bathrooms over here, and there's bathrooms out in the front by the office. The Senior Center was kind enough to let us use the facility here tonight. I'm glad to have it. It's a pretty nice room. We could use a little help when we get done. Don't have any particular business. It created a little bit of a mess. A lot of you are new here tonight. A lot of faces that I don't know. One of the things we did to get people out for this event was to send out texts. We used text messaging. We sent out. There are 4,500 people that we think lean toward the Democrats in Barron County, and we sent out around 3,500 texts to those folks. Some of you actually, I know, I personally sent you that text, but I'd like a show of hands for those who sent her, or let's kind of let us use the facility in your guide.
I didn't get the text. Raise your hand.
I got the email, is that the same or no?
Yes.
Okay.
You got my text.
Okay, that probably, well, I thought it was an email, but it also.
Okay. I personally know that there were three of us punching these things out and responding. Well, good. I think it's a worthwhile program if we can get out. We have about 1,000 people on our email list for Barron County Democrats. If you're not on our email list, please make sure before you leave that I have your email here and we'll add you to it. If you don't like getting all those emails from political parties and you don't like ours, there's a button at the bottom that says cancel my subscription. You just push that and we won't write you anymore. We don't sell your name or take advantage of you in any way, but we do tell you about things like this and keep people apprised of what's going on. We could also use some help. We are really gearing up for this campaign. We're doing an awful lot. I will remind all of you that the February election for Supreme Court Justice is extraordinarily important. You need to go, you need to vote. We need to get a liberal on the Supreme Court. We blew it last year when we failed to elect Justice Neubauer. If we keep Kelly on the court, we will really be behind the 8 ball. And the 8 ball that we're behind is about the gerrymandering. If we can't fix the way Wisconsin voting districts are sorted, we will see Republicans enjoy political power despite representing only 30–40% of the people for the next decade. So voting in this next election is important. Again, we're going to send out texts with the name of the 2 judges who we think you should consider. You can look them up, make your own decisions about whether you like them, but we'll tell you about the 2 liberal judges that are up for that ballot. So we have 2 speakers tonight. Lawrence Dale is here, and he'll go first, present his point of view for the 7th CD. Tricia Zunker is right now in Barron. She's meeting with the Somali folks there, and we expect her probably 6:45, something like that. So to get us started with our candidate presentation, I'm going to introduce Brianna Stanley. Brianna is with Citizen Action. It's a nonpartisan cooperative of people who are progressively minded.
Yeah, so...
Let me finish my introduction, then I'm going to give it to you. I joined Citizen Action right after 2016 because I found that was a group that could put some ideas together and that was organized and were all over the state and were on the ideas that I wanted to see happen. So I've been active with them, as were a number of people in our part of the county, our part around Rice Lake. So I'm really glad that Brianna's here, and we're trying to promote Citizen Action a little bit. So if you like what you see, sign up with her, help them out. They're a good bunch.
Right, like I said, I'm Brianna. I'm the organizer for the Northwestern Wisconsin Co-op of Citizen Action. Citizen Action is a progressive organization. It's a co-op, so it's a member-led co-op essentially. So members pay dues, and then we work on what members want to work on. Right now, our main topics are healthcare. We are pushing for Badger Care expansion, healthcare for all, affordable healthcare, prescription drug reform, and especially long-term care with people for elderly, children, and people with disabilities, and also caregiver rights. We work with Caring Across Generations, that's their whole work. They're one of our affiliates, so we work closely with that. We also work within climate justice, the Green New Deal, voter suppression, Fair Maps. We table with the Fair Maps Coalition in Wisconsin, so we're the leaders in that. So like I said, we're member funded, and we pretty much work on what you want to do. I actually grew up in Chautauqua. I've lived in Eau Claire for 10 years, but I grew up there, so Barron County has a little soft place in my heart. Our steering committee chairperson, Rita Simon, is here as well, so if you have any questions. It's a really great organization. Like I said, we're very progressive minded. We're lucky enough to also be C3 and C4, so we can be partisan and nonpartisan at the same time. We also have a very active education team that's working against the voucher program right now, trying to get people educated about that and where their tax money is going to. If you have any other questions, me and Rita are really good resources. Otherwise, we have a table back there with some information and some sign-ups. Membership dues is $20 a month, but you can always we'll take anything less, anything more. It's up to you guys. But like I said, we'll be around all night if you have any questions. So basically what we did tonight is we are going to have Lawrence Dale and Tricia Zunker speak. We have questions that people either submitted ahead of time or that we ask as our progressive platform. Citizen Action does endorse candidates, so this is kind of also part of that process. So at the end of this, members and non-members can speak their opinion. We have signed our little sheets in the back so you can express your opinion on whether we should endorse or not endorse and who you should. Otherwise, so this is going to be formatted. I have the questions ready, so Lawrence can come up. I'll give him about a couple minutes to introduce himself, what he stands for, then we'll ask the first question. I have about 5 or 6 questions to ask right now. We're going to keep it at a 45-minute, try to keep it at a 45-minute thing, and then we're going to have a quick intermission, and then Tricia will take it. So that is how it's going to go. So I'll let Lawrence introduce himself, and then I'm going to be moderating it, so I'll be the one asking questions.
Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Yes.
And thanks for inviting me. And thanks for all of you coming here today. This is a great opportunity. We owe a great debt of gratitude to not only your community TV station, they interviewed us today too, and now this. It's great. We don't see that happening. We all want to see democracy function, and it's forums like this that give people a true understanding of what what democracy is all about. But a little bit about myself. I've been working and living in Vilas County now for 12 of the last 13 years. And I came down in 2006 to take a job at the local radio station selling ads. As far as my education goes, I have an undergraduate degree from Ohio University. and I have a master's degree in industrial labor relations from the University of Oregon. And my main focus there was economics, and so you'll see if any, well, there's still some more leaflets in the back about my positions on, about my campaign, so if y'all get a chance, be sure to grab one. But,
Excuse me, can you speak up a little bit? There
Okay.
are some people who are hard of hearing.
all righty, but, so anyway, is this better? Okay.
Yeah.
I can hardly help it. I always juggle the microphones when I have one, so it's kind of good that we have good acoustics in here. But yeah, I just want you to know too that this time around, we're at a very critical time, I think, in our district's history. And I'm going to refer a lot. Well, you want me to go into any issues or?
No, I will ask you the question.
Oh, you want
so
to
just-
ask
Yeah, so
questions?
they're all members, so.
Well, maybe there's a question about my background, anything that anybody has in mind that they want to know. I hate talking about myself, but must be the Lutheran in me, I don't know.
Yeah, so we're gonna stick to a pretty strict question schedule, and the intermission's gonna kind of be like open, so you guys can talk to people if they have any questions during intermission, come and talk to you. But we're gonna lead off with our first question, and so this is, our previous CD7 representative, Mr. Sean Duffy, was not very responsive nor accessible to many of his constituents. He chose to listen mostly to constituents who were campaign donors or who towed the Republican Party line and ideology. During the 2017 and 18, when the current administration was trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Duffy did not bother to respond or show up at town halls he was invited to in this district unless they were scheduled by his office, and then only the elite invitees were allowed to attend. He held very few town halls at all, in fact, and was essentially absent from this district's constituents. If you are elected, will you vow to be available and listen to all of the CD7 constituents, regardless of party or persuasion? And if so, how will you plan to fulfill this vow?
Okay. Well, the best example of that, and certainly Sean Duffy and Tom Tiffany and the rest of the Republican Party leadership, especially during that, I assume you all remember the mining bill of 2014. That was a very onerous action. They were imposing mining onto a tourist economy. We're a multi-billion-dollar tourist economy, but yet at that time, the Republican leadership, including Duffy, including Tiffany, and every other leader that's still in there now from that era, which is only 5 years ago, all refused to meet with their constituents over something that is so important as that mining bill. And so they went ahead and shoved it down our throats. They said, this is going to be the way it is. And if you don't like it, that's tough. Because why? We don't have home rule. And so they have the right to not, to go ahead and like in this instance, and Tom Tiffany spearheaded this. So, as much as anything, this election could be and should be a referendum on the leadership of the Republican Party. And they simply have done everything they can to please their big mining interests, benefactors, their big oil benefactors, big dairy benefactors. Look what they're doing to the dairy industry in this. We have a $43 billion dairy industry. But no, they won't meet with the people. In fact, the board that they have, it's called the Livestock Siting Board, I believe is the name of it. That's who these big concentrated animal farm operators go to. They don't want to go to the people and talk about what they plan to bring in. And this is what happened during the mining bill too. So we're seeing a pattern by this so-called leadership in how they deal with communities. And they are not. They're just saying it's our way or the highway, and yet they keep getting reelected. And I think it's time now for me, of course, I'm going to be there for any community that has an issue, especially a dangerous issue like these concentrated animal feeding operations. They're actually moving in, or trying to move in, to Saratoga, right here in Wood County. I have a meeting with one of the news release outfits. They're part of the community television. They want to interview me, and I met with some of the people from Saratoga. And no, they're imposing this, even though they know that Golden Sands, which is the name of the, I'll just call them CAFOs, okay, instead of trying to verbalize, concentrated animal feeding operations is the long term, but CAFOs is the short term. So we don't want to see those kinds of things in. And even though there is no home rule, the people of the city of Saratoga tried to stop it by using the permitting, the building permit route. And they dragged that out for 5 years, and of course, and they finally got a ruling from the Republican-dominated Supreme Court of Wisconsin that a CAFO, even though it has a history of offenses, environmental offenses, health hazard offenses, manure spreading offenses, that farm that they're proposing for Saratoga has projected to be as large as 5,300 head of cows. That produces enough manure that's equivalent to what Madison produces on a daily basis. But of course, Madison has a way to process it. With what these CAFOs do is they just put it in a big lagoon, and then that's where all the methane comes from. And it's, once they spread that raw manure over the porous soils that we have in our farmlands here in Wisconsin, it leaches into the water table. This is all history of this particular CAFO that the Supreme Court of Wisconsin just said could go ahead and move in. I mean, their building permit was in order after it took them 5 years to figure that out, I guess. But the people of Saratoga are just, they just wanted to delay it. They wanted somehow to shoo them off, get out of here. But we don't have home rule. But again, the Republican Party leadership has set it up so that these things can move in next door to any one of you. They can be your neighbors like that. They're not stopping them. So, yes, you have to meet with the people on issues like this. This is John Hopkins Center for Public Health also warned, this is back in 2011, that we risk having these animals being so concentrated. In fact, we see in the swine industry, in the hog industry in China and in Mexico, where an entire source of supply for these animals was wiped out due to swine flu. Has anybody heard of swine flu? It's transferable to humans. What's going to come up with these cattle, all these cows being concentrated like that? They're already a health hazard before the disease that may develop with them transfers over to us. They're health hazards. The National Health Organization came out in 2011. They did a review of 40 studies about these types of hazards, health hazards, human health hazards. And they came up with the idea, not actually the idea, but the proclamation that there should be a moratorium on it. And yet, the Republican Party leadership is bringing them in. I think we all should be outraged. I think if you're a Republican, you should be outraged. It has cost us 7,000 small family farm dairy operations since 2004. And so, it's like they're eating their own. Most of those people probably voted for Trump, I would imagine. But they're not only eating their own, they're exposing us to the same hazards that that come with that type of industrial development.
Right. So the next question is going to be, in reforming healthcare, how would you restructure 1, healthcare delivery, 2, private and public, so Medicare and Medicaid insurance programs, and the pharmaceutical and medical device companies and their policies and practices?
Well, I'm not a policy wonk, but I do know that I support Medicare for all. And I think we all should. We've tried to patch up the current dysfunctional system for years. It's just been a complete failure. We have 500,000 people a year declaring bankruptcy because of these of medical billings that they've incurred. Just from getting sick, you lose your entire estate. A lot of dairy farmers do. If you get injured on a job, that could cost you your farm. It could cause any business person that's marginal, that can't afford the high cost of health insurance under the current system. So, yeah, we need to go to Medicare for all. And I know it raises the issue, well, how do we fund it? And I know the Sanders plan and the Warren plan have come up with the idea of, well, in the Sanders case, would be taxing the trade done by Wall Street. And I think that's fair, because right now, if you go downtown in Rice Lake and deal with any merchant, you buy something, you pay a sales tax. But if one of these traders on Wall Street makes a trade, and they make a sale, it's like they should be paying a federal sales tax. And Sanders has come up with the understanding that this would fund this Medicare for All plan, guaranteeing that health care is a right and not a privilege. That's what we're saying for. We want everybody to be covered because we're all Americans and we care about each other. And I think that plan makes a lot of sense. And his figures, you have to respect because he has enough money to have them vetted by anybody. But like I say, I'm not a policy wonk. I didn't really come up and go line by line to check out his figures, but I feel that makes sense. And then the Elizabeth Warren plan is a wealth tax. And well, both of them are really. But a wealth tax, I saw an interesting statistic a while back, not too long ago. It said that 57% of Republicans support a wealth tax. And it's only fair. Look at 1960. 1 out of every 4 Americans had a manufacturing job. We had a surplus in trade. I mean, we were the ones that were the exporters of goods, the producers of goods. Now you go forward to today, 1 out of 10 Americans works in manufacturing. Well, what were those manufacturing jobs about back then? Those jobs were about, those were a lot of them, if not 90% of them, were union jobs. They paid a wage, a living wage, that had benefits that allowed a person to send their kids to college. My brother-in-law worked at Wixom. They made the Lincoln Mercuries down there near Detroit. And he worked in the sewer plant that processed the sewage for that community in conjunction with the Ford Motor Company. And he sent all 4 of his kids to college. And he has a really nice place, for retirement. Beautiful place, way out in the country, nice home. And that's gone. Used to be, we could, as blue-collar working people, we could look forward to having a middle-class style of standard of living. We don't have that anymore. Now it's 1 out of every 10 is working in manufacturing, and I would venture to guess that 80 to 90% of those are probably non-union. So, and I don't think those employers are looking to make sure everybody has a living wage. So we have to fight for that. Did I cover that?
Sure. All right, so do you support universal family care, government programs to ensure all families have access to paid medical and family leave, government-supported child care, and universal long-term care, and elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, Medicare for All includes long-term care and vision and dental, so it's an expansion. I sell health insurance, Medicare supplement plans, that's what I do for a living. And I live paycheck to paycheck like a lot of people do. I'm not afraid to, or embarrassed to say so. That we have a really poor economy. It's not very diversified, and there's few business prospects. But I'd rather live here than in the asphalt jungle where maybe you could go and make $80,000 a year in another market that's more urban. The other thing we're talking about here is universal pre-K. That would run about $75 billion a year, the last figure I saw on it. And it gets into the question, well, how do we fund these programs? I mean, yes, they're important, and I do support having child care, free child care for everybody, free universal pre-K. And we also want to go a step further. We want to see free public college for our kids and for, or if they prefer to go to trade school. How are we going to finance it? Goes right back to that 1960 figure I just mentioned. 1 out of every 4 back then had the good job where they could attain middle class standards of living. But now we don't. So the one thing that we have to understand is that who made the money transitioning from 1 out of every 4 in manufacturing to where we're at today with only 14% of our economy involved in manufacturing at all. And so many of us having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get by monthly. So It wasn't that they transferred all those factories to Mexico and China and didn't make any money doing it. In fact, I would venture to say that a lot of these companies are making money today from something they did 30 years ago that hurt the blue-collar prospects of being middle class. So if anybody comes back to you when you say that, yes, we need to have universal pre-K and we need to have universal child care, you can say to them is, look, they have the money to do it. The Elizabeth Warren plan calls for, what, a 2% wealth tax on everybody who makes $50 million or more. Well, that's what? Is that going to lower any rich person's standard of living by paying that? I don't think so. So this is the way to fund it. Under FDR, it was a 91% tax. That's how we got out of the Great Depression of the 1930s. And I like to refer to myself as an FDR Democrat. I really think that FDR's, he's the one in his administration created the New Deal. He also created, through his administration, a lot of things we take for granted today. Social Security, anybody getting Social Security payments or will soon? That's an FDR program. What about Work Progress Administration, putting people to work at good paying jobs that have no employment? Do we have infrastructure problems in this country today? Well, people in cities can't even drink their water without worrying about it because it's so tainted. That's a big job. We have bridges. Do we want to see any more of those Minneapolis bridge collapses? That's what we're facing if we don't come up with the infrastructure repairs that are necessary. What about organizing? We had the Taylor Act back. That was another FDR administration. The Taylor Act gave us what? The right to organize. It gave us the middle class with the blue-collar people in it. It made us one of the biggest markets in the world that's desired by all the countries. They all want a piece of this market. And we built it. Through FDR's administration, we set the tone. Now a lot of that's disappearing. We want to see people making $15 an hour. I was talking to the editor over at the Lakeland Times in Monaco the other day, and he said, well, look, this might put a lot of small businesses out of business if they had to pay their workers $15 an hour. But if you can't afford to pay a living wage, maybe you shouldn't be hiring people, number one. And number two is that anybody who works and then has to go down to the welfare office and apply for food stamps and housing assistance is being given the worst indignity you can do to a working person. Nobody wants a handout. But what that effectively is, we are subsidizing the employer that won't pay a living wage. I was in Hardee's in Wausau, talked to the manager there. She's on food stamps, and yet she's making $11 an hour. But we're subsidizing Hardee's, a multi-billion-dollar fast food company. They're using the welfare system to subsidize wages that they refuse to pay. That's wrong, and that's un-American. And I just think that we need to continue putting pressure on to make sure that $15 an hour is the base. I mean, if you look back at the minimum wage in 1970, workers were being paid more then than they are today at today's minimum wage, even though it's higher. Because of the cost of living. They didn't put a COLA in there. And that, by the way, $15 an hour should include a COLA, cost of living adjustment. We need to do that. And these, I know it sounds like, fantasy land here. We're talking about things that may not happen, but this is our only option. We don't have the option anymore of just sitting back. All of you need to be active. Get on the phones, get people out to vote, let people know that when the election is, let them know that you'll give them a ride. We just need to, and also get this message out, especially on this. I think the CAFO issue, I wasn't even aware of it in December. That's how new it is to me. If I can talk about it, I know all of you can, because it's such a important base issue. We cannot allow 7,000 family farm, highly capitalized family farm businesses just to be swept away because some Republican Party leadership want to have these big dairy, big ag interests as their benefactors so that they can run the next election. You know, this is wrong. And did I catch everything there for you? Okay.
All right, and you kind of touched base on this one in your previous answer, but do you support returning to the progressive taxation model of the last century where millionaires and billionaires are taxed at 70% or more? And then elaborate.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, it was 91%. And you know what? We had a booming economy when in the 50s and 60s, in the late 40s with the 91% tax. And that paid for the interstate roads, paid for a lot of things since the day of FDR, and that legacy still lingers. But yeah, of course, that's necessary. And I think the Elizabeth Warren plan and the Sanders plan talking about the wealth tax, 2 cents on every dollar over 50 million, I think that makes a lot of sense. And if we need 3%, it's still a lot cheaper than what they were paying, you know, back in the 50s. So they have to pay for it. They have run the working class in this country down to bare minimum standards. Having to have 2 or 3 jobs in order to make a living is unfair, it's inhuman, making us compete for the slave wages that they pay in China and Mexico, threatening to throw our folks out of work because they can get it done cheaper. That's wrong. And I think our international trade agreements have to include this fact, that if we're going to trade with a totalitarian country like China, and a country that's almost a narco state like Mexico, you know, they have to show us that they deserve to be entered into the American economy, to trade with, you know, to actually sell stuff here. And we need benchmarks that show that they have made progress on their human rights, that they are allowing their workers to collectively bargain, or that they're imposing conditions like environmental regulations that allow them to outcompete us because they don't have to, you know, they don't have the same standards we have here. So we need a level playing field. That's been something that organized labor has argued for forever. And, you know, all these trade deals and things just haven't worked because there seems to be, like, there's just no standards. You can just come in and do what you want, sell your products here, that's fine. And I don't think we should offer any autocrat that option, any tyrannical government that option. Treat them like they're just one of the rest of Western Europe and the countries that do have democracies. It's not right, and I think we can do better.
All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit. Do you support the Green New Deal? And also, if you were elected to Congress, what would you do to fight climate justice? Fight for climate justice?
Yeah. Well, before I got into this CAFO issue, my #1 platform plank was a Green New Deal for the 7th Congressional District. And the reason for that, obviously, is to fight climate change, to find environmentally friendly industries that would dovetail nicely with our environmentally friendly tourist economy. So I propose, and this is based on a study I did personally years ago about meat products, because I had a gig job selling meat products, and you know, you get curious about what you're dealing with and why are you paying this amount of money for this amount of value-added meat products. That's where it's all shelf-ready and ready to sell. Why is the cost this way, and why does it happen to be shipped all the way from northern Illinois, which is where I was getting my product then, all the way up here, and we raise some of the best meat animals in the world. The red and black Angus cattle, they come from all over the Midwest to buy our cattle up here, but the farmers only get the live weight price. That's all they get. They don't get any of the, you know, steaks, cuts, or any of that. That's what they call the value added. So I delved into that, and I collaborated with the North Dakota State University Ag economist. I happened to find one of his feasibility studies on a website, and he walked me through it. And piece by piece, I put together a feasibility study and getting all the cost factors lined up. And come to find out, after he reviewed it, he says, this looks good to me, but it showed that we could have made, with this study being operational, $250,000 of new money coming in to the Northwoods. And so what does this involve? The study involved the building of a slaughter plant, meat processing, and direct marketing cooperative. And again, we're looking to be environmentally friendly, so we felt that using these as anchors in a community and having about 6 or 7 of them spread across the 7th district, we would attract small family farms in. But what would be the attraction? I mean, how could we show that this is going to be commercially viable? Well, what the study showed is that we could sell our meat products, beef, chicken, and pork, or poultry and pork, were the only 3 that I looked into carefully, because those are 3 high-demand products. So, getting back to the question, that's what I would want to have done if I'm elected to Congress. We need to have, I tried to do it myself before. This is years ago. But the thing is, there's just too many hoops. We have to get the feasibility study done. Then we have to get the financing done. And we have to find out what the Small Business Administration's role can be. Then we have to find out what monies we can get from what foundations. Have to coordinate all this just to get one plant in place. And of course, before that all starts, we have to have the feasibility study done that could cost $20,000 or $30,000, which is covered by USDA Rural Development grants. So putting this together is a job. You need a congressman that can work with the people in the community. And getting back to your earlier question, yes, this whole thing is focused on being involved with your local county commissioners to maybe do a consortium of counties to get one of these facilities built. And I think it would go a long ways towards bringing new family farms into the community and also be environmentally sustainable and dovetail nicely with our multi-billion-dollar tourist economy. The other prong of that was, because I don't know if you've all been over to Marathon County or Lincoln lately. Park Falls, that's in Price County. But we've had a lot of problems over there with unemployment. For example, Park Falls just laid off within the last 3 months 300 employees at their mill. Brocaw's been shut down for a while, but I think they employed maybe several hundred employees there. But that's all gone now. It's not operational. I did a lot of work getting petitions signed for getting on the ballot in Rhinelander, talking to the people there. From what I gather, they're operating at about 30% for that mill. It used to employ close to 2,000 people. So what do we do as for something that's going to put people to work, allow the farmers to, and new farm businesses to come in, and the current farmers be able to have some more cash flow? So what I'm proposing is to do the same thing as with the slaughter plant, meat processing, and direct marketing. Set up a cooperative venture where possible in order to get a consortium of county commissioners to have a feasibility study done to determine if hemp would be able to give us a commercially viable and sustainable product. If we were to find something like that, it would help, of course, put a lot more farmers to work. And one of the things that interested me most was a report I read in the paper about Germany in their automobile manufacturing. They now do all their interior automobile molding made from hemp. So that sounds very promising. I don't know how many different products are out there. That's why these key feasibility studies are so important to do. We have to move forward because the Republican leadership is not showing us that path. And I believe what we need to do is make this election, as much as anything else, a referendum on the Republican Party leadership, and we need to ask our friends who are Republicans, do you really want us to stay on this path? And I don't think any of them would agree that that's right, especially when you point out to them that we've lost those 7,000 highly capitalized small family dairy farms due to these CAFOs. So I think we have a big issue, a great issue to put out there, and we want Republicans to vote Democrat this time. We want them to send a message that these CAFOs and this policy of destroying the environment, bringing health hazards into our community, not sitting down and talking with us first, just having that arbitrary ability, this has to be stopped. And the way to send that message is to have your Republican friends and your independent friends vote Democrat. Vote for Lawrence Dale on February the 18th. I think that would send a loud message.
All right, and this will be, there's more questions, but these are pretty quick ones. What is your top priority if you were elected?
Well,
Your number one.
boy, you know, there's so many important issues, but what has grabbed me, as you all can tell, is this concentrated animal feeding operation industry. This is out of control. This is a health hazard, it's a danger to our communities, and it's throwing thousands of independent small businesses out of business. We are totally decimating the iconic industry of this state, which is dairy farming. They also need to understand with dairy farming, the way it's done by small farmers is environmentally sustainable. These CAFOs, on the other hand, with their open lagoons, are emitting methane, leaving the carbon footprint that your small family farm would never leave. So if you want to use agriculture to fight climate change, then we need to transition. And well, I'm calling for a moratorium on my campaign. Let's have a moratorium on these CAFOs. These things are simply too destructive. And I think there's a lot of evidence. And those of you who have my flyer with my website, I have some more on the back there if you could pass them around. What you will find there is a link to the investigative report done by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It's very detailed, but if you follow it, if you read it carefully, I think you'll come to the conclusion that I have come to. And I think there's collusion between big agribusiness and the leadership of the Republican Party. And I'm just extrapolating that from reading this very in-depth report. So you all can read it yourselves and see if I'm right about this. It just seems crazy that you're having all these farmers leave the business because of the overproduction of milk, which is driving the price of milk down so much that it can't cover costs. So you see multi-generational family farms having to go out of business when in fact they produce a great product. So why is it then that under the Walker administration, and a lot of those people are still here, why is it that they did the initiative called Grow Wisconsin Dairy, giving incentives to farmers to increase the production of milk? That's what's driving them out of business already. It's just madness. And they just are so haughty. They think they can do anything now. And we have to talk to our Republican friends and tell them this cannot go on. That we're against all these family farms being shut down, and we're against this collusion that's going on simply for the Republican Party to get the money from these wealthy agribusiness operations. So, did I cover?
Yeah, and this will be a really quick one. What would be a good catchphrase for people to remember you by?
Good catchphrase. Well, my first plank on my website is, we need to have a moratorium on CAFOs. If that is something that will help you remember to campaign hard, we need to turn this district. I mean, it's almost imperative. If you all haven't got the fire on you now with this kind of onslaught against our neighbors and against the environmental integrity of the neighborhood you live in, this, like I said, they can locate these things anywhere they want. And if you want to get in touch with or see what's going on with the CAFO down there in Saratoga, they have their webpage is protectwoodcounty.org. Protectwoodcounty.org. They have a really nice slideshow, shows you the pictures of the things that they're fighting against. These very same things could be in your neighborhood, within the next couple of years. So we have to get home rule back, and that would be a very important thing. But I guess the main thing is, I don't think even Republicans respect the fact that the path that the Republican leadership has taken us on is one that is one that's viable. It's destructive, and I think we have to fight hard to get rid of it. But I think it's to our advantage, because I don't know if anybody, Republican or Democrat, is going to say, you know, it's just business as usual. It's the market forces that are doing it. You know, it's not market forces. So, anyway, anything else?
No, that is it. So we are going to go into about a 15-minute intermission. I don't think Tricia's here yet, is she? Unless I'm not looking around.
Should be pretty quick.
Okay,
I think
so.
about 5-minute intermission will about do it.
Okay, good. So there is refreshments in the back. Thank you to everybody that brought them. So go ahead and get that settled, and then we'll continue. If you have any questions for Lauren?
I think a round of applause.
probably in the neighborhood of 30, 35 bucks a piece. So if you like a yard sign placed on your prominent property, we'll print it up for you. You just help us pay for it, and we'll make sure it happens. But anyway, that's where we're going. We'll probably paint signs too. We've always painted signs in the past. I have a question before we get started. There's show of hands, people from Barron County and people from Rusk County and from Polk County. Polk, all right. And from Sawyer and Washburn. And anybody from down south, Chippewa Way? There you go. All right. Okay. Thank you for coming, folks. I'll turn it over back to you.
All right, so we're gonna have Tricia come to the stage. And she's gonna do it, so like we did with Lauren, she's gonna introduce herself, give her your story and stuff, and then we'll go into the questions. So, everybody here.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for prioritizing tonight, prioritizing this election, and coming out. I know everybody's time is valuable, so I appreciate that you're here tonight. I'm Tricia Zucker. I'm a Democratic candidate for the 7th Congressional District special election, and what an amazing opportunity we have here. Not only are we going to flip this district, but when we do, Wisconsin is blue again, and then, given Wisconsin's centrality in the presidential election, we can reclaim our country from this Trumpian nightmare. The pathway to a new president is Wisconsin special election, Wisconsin 7th special election. So this is so critical. There's already national attention about this. I don't know if you saw the story in The Hill. Last week there was something in Daily Kos. But people are paying attention, and come April, this special election is going to have national attention. And we really need to elect a strong candidate that is going to beat the Republican, and we all know who he likely is, and all the dark money he is funneling in. So I was born and raised in Wausau. I am Ho-Chunk on my dad's side, and I come from generations of dairy farmers on my mom's side. My grandpa was a dairy farmer in the town of Easton, just outside of Wausau. I grew up in a strong union household. My mom is a United Steelworkers Local 2-224 union member for 30 plus years, including serving as recording secretary for over a decade. And I was out on the picket lines when James River was striking in 1992. Some of you might remember that news coverage. It was over 2 weeks of strikes. I was 12 years old at the time. I am a first-generation college graduate. I attended University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I earned a triple major and certificate in 4 years. And I did that through hard work. I did that through scholarships, some help from my tribe, Ho-Chunk Nation, and working 2 jobs. Because I had to put myself through school. My parents didn't have the funds. You know, they had me young, they tried the best that they could, but, you know, growing up, didn't have a whole lot. In fact, when I was 7 years old, there was a snowstorm, much like the one that's going to be coming through here in a couple of days, and my mom couldn't get her car out of the driveway to work. We couldn't go one day without her wages. So what she did was wrap herself in a blanket and walk the 4 miles to work. And that is what shapes how I see the world and how I see doing things, looking out for the little guy, because I am a little guy, gal. So I'm a first-generation college graduate. After that, I went to law school at UCLA. And I chose UCLA because of their stellar federal Indian law and tribal legal development program. And I'm so blessed that they chose me too when they accepted me. And I went out there and I studied in that program, and I earned my law degree, and I passed the California bar exam, and I practiced law for a bit out there. And then I brought that education and experience back to Wisconsin. And I did that because a really exciting opportunity arose, and it was a special election. And that was a special election in the Ho-Chunk Nation for the position of Associate Justice on the Ho-Chunk Supreme Court. And I was the underdog. There were 4 candidates. I was by far the underdog. But I campaigned really hard, because that's what I do. And when I put myself out there for something, I do it 120%. So I was campaigning, I was living out in California, coming back to Wisconsin to campaign, and some of you might know that Ho-Chunk Nation is the only tribe in Wisconsin that doesn't have reservation land. So of the 11 federally recognized tribes, my tribe is the only one without reservation land. Our lands are held in pockets throughout the state called federal trust land. So you can imagine what that's like, having to fly back to campaign in Nakusa and Wittenberg, and then go back to California, and then come back and campaign in Baraboo and Toma, and then go back with my 2.5-year-old in tow. I'm a single mom, by the way. And he's been on many campaign trails by this point, by the way. But I'll tell you, it was really good foreshadowing, campaigning all throughout the state, because this congressional district is huge. 26 counties, 1/3 of the state. I have been all over it. I have been meeting with so many voters. Everybody is desperate for change, desperate for real representation. I am too, and that's why I'm running. Well, I did prevail in that first election in 2013. I did prevail, and I moved back to Wisconsin with my son. And we were first living in Indian Heights down in Wisconsin Dells. That's some of our tribal trust land down in Wisconsin Dells. And then I moved back to Wausau. My grandpa, the dairy farmer that I told you about, he was in his last years. And I said, I'm going to take my son home, be close to Grandpa. I'm never going to regret that. And it's true, because he was called home last year, and I say Grandpa brought us home. And when in doing so, there were other things that I ended up doing in the Wausau community. A situation arose when my son was in kindergarten. He's in 3rd grade now, but he was in kindergarten in the Wausau School District. And I was reading about the child poverty. And I was reading about the skyrocketing food insecurity that is suffered by our children in the Wausau community. And I was so alarmed, I went to local organizations so I could learn more, because that's what I do. I dive into something, I find out the numbers, I find out the data. I think that we have way too many decisions that don't go to the data, that don't listen to the scientists, that don't listen to the experts, and we need to be doing that. So I went to United Way of Marathon County. I met with people from the Marathon County Hunger Coalition, and I learned about the sad situation of our students that have the free and reduced lunch at school. So they know that they have Friday lunch, right, at school. But they don't know where their next meal is going to come from until Monday morning at breakfast again at school. And so I went to my local school board, Wausau School Board, and I said, we need to do better. We need to do more for our students. Hungry students can't learn. And at the same time, there was a last-minute town hall that my congressperson was holding. And I just so happened to find out about it. I don't know how, because I wasn't on a list of friendlies. But I managed to find out, and I went over there, and I couldn't believe it, but he called on me. So I asked him about this. You all know who I'm talking about, right? He recently resigned, leaving us in this situation where a person has to run twice in 1 year. And anyway, I asked him about this. And I said, I told him the numbers. I said, this is heartbreaking, we need to do better. And this is the response I was met with. Yeah, it's really sad, isn't it? Are you kidding me? That's your answer? You are somebody in a position to do something. I was so angry, but also motivated. Have you ever felt that way, where you're angry, but you use it, you channel it to motivation? I said, I'm gonna run against this guy. And I called the 7th CD chair, and I spoke with her. At the time it was Melissa Schrader, now it's Kim Butler, but I spoke with Melissa. And I found out about a number of candidates. And I found out about Sean's $2 million already amassed, and I thought, okay, maybe now is not my time. And so I focused my efforts more locally. And I ended up running for Wausau School Board, because I went there and I was vocal about change. And I said, well, I can be vocal about change, or I can be in the seat and be a decision maker. And so I campaigned really hard once again, and I unseated an incumbent. And I should tell you, with the Ho-Chunk campaigning, the tribal elders say I set a new standard of campaigning. And they say that in Wausau too about the school board election, because most people don't knock on 3,500 doors or have signs all over town. But I did, because I wanted to do it, and I felt I could do it, and now a year later, I'm the school board president. Yes. I mean business, okay? So Wausau School District is the 13th largest school district in the state of Wisconsin. And while I've been on there, I have done a number of things. Maybe some of you have heard of those statewide efforts as it relates to educational policy and retirement of race-based mascots. That's going to be voted on by all public school boards later this month. That is something that started when I brought that to my board, and then I sought co-sponsorship from 18 school districts. And since I did that work starting just last July, 3 of the 31 school districts that still retain those mascots actually undertook to change. And either they did it right away, or they're doing it at the end of this academic year, and that is profound because thousands of students will now not be exposed to a hostile learning environment. And it's just really an important matter of educational policy. I've also worked on things in the Wausau area and in Marathon County, not in an elected capacity. So just to point out, I serve in 2 elected capacities, one for Ho-Chunk Nation, my tribe, one for Wausau. But I also worked on getting Indigenous Peoples Day recognized in Wausau. I went to the Wausau Mayor and Wausau City Council, got a proclamation to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and then I worked with the Marathon County Board. And that is the largest county board in this country. 38 people serve on it. And I have had a resolution, way too many people. I mean, how efficient is that? Hopefully they'll address that at some point. But 38 people, it passed unanimously. A resolution to recognize the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day. And that is really important because when you live in a community and feel invisible, that is important. And in fact, I then formed a nonprofit and fundraised to bring back a powwow. And so just this past October, we had the inaugural Central Wisconsin Indigenous Peoples Day powwow. And that wasn't just for the Native community, although it was important. It was for everybody. Everybody was invited. Everybody could come, enjoy our music, see our beautiful regalia, eat our food. It was just an experience for the whole community. And that powwow was October 12th and 13th. I announced my run on October 14th. I can't tell you what that week before was like, but it was, I couldn't because I don't have the words. It was so hectic between announcing the run for this and getting that powwow off the ground and running, and it was a success. We had 200 dancers on the floor, 12 drums, and for anybody that knows about powwows, that's a really, really great powwow. So I hope it's coming back next year, but I have to delegate quite a bit next year. So a couple of things that I just want to say, and then we can talk about why I'm running. And that's something people want to know. They say, why are you running? Why are you running? Well, it's not that this is the first. It's not like I just thought this was a good idea. You know, after the debacle of the exchange in 2018, I decided probably, down the road. I was thinking 2022. But this opportunity arose, and it is an opportunity. It is our opportunity to take back this district. Because once somebody is in that seat, it's pretty hard to get them out. So we got to get that person in that seat in May. Only 2 people have served in this seat in the last 50 years. And it's important to me. I believe in public service. I have a demonstrated record of serving my communities, of putting the time in, putting the effort in, and doing the hard work. And there's 3 things about me when it comes to decision making. The way that I look at everything is through the lens of compassion, making sure this is the compassionate choice, making sure that we're looking out for our vulnerable, our most vulnerable. Second lens of equality. It doesn't matter what somebody looks like, or who they love, or how they identify their gender. Everybody is equal, and we need to make sure that our legislation reflects that. And third, opportunity. How are we providing the most equitable opportunity so that people have the best chance at success? And so that's how I approach things. I think it's important to remember, too, that we need to achieve a government that actually reflects society. And our Congress does not reflect society. when I'm elected to this seat, I will be the first woman ever to represent Wisconsin 7. It is 2020. Women's issues are human issues, and people shouldn't vote for me because I'm a woman. People should vote for me because I'm a woman who's going to get the job done. Also, Wisconsin has never been represented by a Native American. I will be the first Native American, specifically Ho-Chunk, to represent Wisconsin in Congress. And third, I didn't even know this until after I was already running. When I'm elected to this seat, I will double the population of single parents in Congress. Does that sound reflective of society? No. I'll tell you why, because the system is rigged. We need campaign finance reform like there's no tomorrow. And quite frankly, if we don't address some things, there might not be tomorrow. Look at this climate emergency we're living in. We need to do better for our planet, for our children, for our grandchildren. But no, we need campaign finance reform, because it is keeping out people that would be excellent representatives. You know, I don't accept corporate PAC money, so I'm getting my $10 donations and $20 donations. I appreciate each and every one of those because I know the value of a hard-earned dollar. But my likely opponent is sitting there with the dark money just funneling in. We need to get corporate money out of politics, and it's the people that vote for their representatives, and only the people. So those are a few things I can address, specifically concerns that I have on my mind. If I have the time, I know you have questions for me, but just kind of like my issues, or do you want to?
Let's do my questions and then your
Okay.
issues at the end.
Okay.
And actually, this is an attendee question that kind of goes into some part of your story. So I'll start with this one. Our previous representative, Sean Duffy, was not very responsive nor accessible to many of his constituents. And he chose to listen mostly to the constituents who were campaign donors or who toed the Republican Party line. During the 2017 and 18 repeal of the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Duffy did not bother to respond or to show up at town halls he was invited to in his district unless they were scheduled by his office and only the elite invitees were allowed to attend, or he didn't publicize it to any of the public. If you are elected, will you vow to be available and listen to all of your CD7 constituents, regardless of party or persuasion, and how do you plan to fulfill this vow?
Absolutely. Okay, first of all, when I'm elected to represent Wisconsin 7, I represent everybody, not just the people that voted for me, and that, you know, people need to get that as a starting point. I will have regular town halls with ample notice to everybody, not this secret list of friendlies, I know because I wasn't on it, so I know exactly what you're talking about, but I think that absolutely that we need to ensure that there are town halls, that people are heard, and that I can listen. You know, it's not just about me talking. I need to hear. I just came from an event in Barron, not an event, but a meeting with some members of the Somali community, and it was primarily to listen, so that I could just hear their concerns. And that's an important part of leadership. I have another experience with our former congressperson that is similar and is along these lines. So in June 2018, some horrifying practices were occurring, separating children from their family at the border. Something that I think is inhumane and needs to stop immediately. And so I and hundreds of other lawyer moms, call ourselves, formed a group called Lawyer Moms of America. And we drafted a letter to our respective congresspersons that would be delivered. So it's a single letter, but then we identified who would be the person to deliver that letter to their congressperson. Any guess who delivered to Sean Duffy's office? Yeah, it was me. So I delivered that. And of course, I mean, he wasn't there, it was the WASA office. About 6 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail that didn't address at all what my concern was. And you know, it's insulting. It's insulting, and I think we should not insult one another. We should treat each other with respect, even if the viewpoints are differing and there is disagreement. I don't know how there could be such disagreement on such an inhumane and cruel practice, but I guess that's why he didn't address it. No, but it's things like that. You know, I'm 39 years old. So I grew up, and Congressman Obey was my congressman, but I didn't really know about his amazing constituency services, but I've heard about him now, and that's what we need to get back to, and that's what the people of 7th CD deserve.
Perfect. All right, so the next question is going to be a healthcare question. In reforming healthcare, how would you restructure one, healthcare delivery, private, public, so Medicare and Medicaid insurance programs, and pharmaceutical and medical device companies' policies and practices?
Okay, so healthcare is a huge issue here in the 7th CD, and there's some differing opinions, but one thing we can all agree on is that if we don't elect a Democrat, and I'm a registered Democrat, and I have been since I was 18 years old, if we don't elect a Democrat, the likely opponent is going to do everything he can to destroy healthcare, to make it more expensive, to make it where more people die because they don't have healthcare or go into debt. So that has to be a starting point because we have a lot of options on what we're able to address. We need to have accessible, affordable healthcare. We need to lower the costs of prescription drugs dramatically. I worked in intellectual property law early in my legal career, and it is, frankly, intolerable that we have Big Pharma getting away with charging us here in America 10 times what they charge that same drug in another country. It's wrong. And you know why? This goes back to campaign finance reform, because Big Pharma is lining the pockets and buying the elections of those individuals. Again, I don't accept corporate PAC money, and I think we need to take Big Pharma on right away. HR 3, this is sitting in Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard. We need to address this. I have a friend who is 71 years old, and she says she can never stop working because her son is diabetic, and he couldn't afford his insulin. He had an accident. It's a whole thing. They're 6 figures in debt, and she says she's not going to leave. He's an adult now. She says she's not going to leave him by the wayside. It's her son. So she says she can never stop working. And she actually was excited, some of the promises that were made in the last presidential election, thinking it was going to help them. But it didn't, right? Yeah, right? So that's something. But going to healthcare, though, I've been going all around this district. And everybody recognizes how gerrymandered this district is, right? So we need to make sure that we win this district. And we are going to win this district by allowing people some choice. I support Medicare for all for those who want it. And certainly if it gets to a vote on the floor, I will vote in favor of it. But we are not there yet. We are hearing so much about this because of the presidential nominees, the Democratic presidential nominees. I have been out talking to folks that they like their health insurance. And they don't want to feel that something is imposed on them before they've had an opportunity to learn more about it. And I've been talking to union members who negotiated really hard for their health care. And they don't want that to be taken away from them, which is how it feels. We have to remember how things feel to somebody. So, if I'm going around saying that we need to do this right away, that doesn't allow somebody to feel empowered in making their own health decisions. And that's what we need to do. People need to be empowered for those personal decisions. I say that whether I'm talking about my fierce defense of a woman's right to bodily autonomy, or similarly, their right to make their health care decisions. Now, going back to your town halls and your question about having these meaningful conversations with constituents, should that legislation come to the floor for a vote, well, that gives me time to hold those town halls with ample notice and hear from individuals, and for me to explain why I'm voting a certain way. But to run out here now, we're just not there. I think we need to look at the big picture right now and remember that if my likely opponent wins this seat, more people will die and more people will go bankrupt. And we can't let that happen.
Perfect. Awesome.
Oh, and PS, when we're talking about, this is not even a PS, but you're moving on. When I'm talking about healthcare, keep in mind, I'm also talking about mental health care. We need to make sure that we are covering mental health care and that people are getting the help, the assistance, and the medications that they need.
Awesome, all right. And do you support universal family care, government programs that ensure all families have access to paid medical and family leave, government-supported childcare, and universal long-term care? Elaborate.
Yes, I support these programs. I think that we need to look at how we're supporting them. We need to tax the people that need to be taxed. We need to tax our corporations. We need to tax our millionaires and billionaires that aren't being taxed at the rates that they should be. And when we do that, we're going to be able to provide these opportunities for success for our children and for our families.
Okay. And then the next question is going to be, which kind of goes into this, do you support returning to the progressive taxation model of the last century where millionaires and billionaires are taxed at 70% or more?
Well, as I said, I believe that we absolutely have to address the taxation system and tax millionaires, billionaires, and corporations like they should be. I cannot commit to a percentage. That we're not where we need to be. I can't say 70%, but we absolutely have to increase the taxes that they are paying.
Perfect. Okay, and our next question could be, do you support the Green New Deal and what will you do to fight for climate justice?
This is so important because we are dealing with a climate emergency. You know, people are talking about climate change, but we're dealing with a climate emergency that needs to be addressed with the urgency it requires. We need to ensure that we have clean air and clean water and that our beautiful land stay protected from corporate greed. I definitely support serious efforts, meaningful efforts, and I think these are things that can be incorporated in legislation across the board. You know, what's the environmental aspect? How can we include something that is going to help this planet, that's going to protect the environment? I think that the Green New Deal is excellent principles, but it's not legislative text. And we need to have an opportunity for debate. It's resolution, but we need to have something that can be debated. But I agree with the principles, absolutely.
Perfect. And then what is going to be your top priority if you are elected? Your first thing you're going to do?
Yes. Well, I think that we have to address prescription drugs. We have to lower the cost of those. What Big Pharma is getting away with is just criminal, quite frankly. But you know, you're asking me about something, and it's like I really want to be able to talk about farm prices too, and the fact that we need affordable, accessible health care. It's hard to say just one, because we have so much at stake here. You know, I know it's my name on the ballot, but really, what we're talking about is the farm crisis, is health care, is lowering the cost of prescription drugs, is the climate emergency, is properly funding our public schools and investing in our children. It's good jobs and a living wage. It's campaign finance reform. It's criminal justice reform. There is so much at stake with this election. We need to make sure we get the right person in that seat.
Awesome. And then the final question I have is, if you could choose a catchphrase for people to remember you by during the primary, what would that be?
Oh, goodness. Let's get to work.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Hey, that's how I am. I'm all about hard work. One thing that you can know about me is that I am fully prepared to work across the aisle. And this is what I do in other elected capacities. In fact, somebody that I work the best with on the school board, he is a politically opposite end of the spectrum. But I do it through respectful communication, through listening, through looking at the numbers and the data, which, as I said earlier, is something we need to do. Why aren't we listening to the scientists? We need to. Why aren't we listening to the experts? We need to. You know, we look at these rates of gun violence and people looking the other way, and climate emergency. So I think that the work ethic that I have is I want to be effective. It's important to me personally, but it's also important to me because that's what the voters, the constituents deserve. And I don't like this divisiveness, and I know it's going to get real ugly sooner than later, because the other side is going to want to get really ugly. And it's important to rise above that. I mean, there's times when the gloves come off, but I think it's important to rise above that because we are more alike than we are different here in the 7th CD. And we just need to look at making life better for everyday Wisconsinites, for our children, for the environment, who can't speak for herself and she needs somebody to do it. So that's how I approach things. Zunker, let's get to work.
Oh, if you want to say last words. Because you answered those questions. You answered those questions really quickly, so.
I've been talking all day. I got into Rice Lake at 11:30 this morning. I've been going all day. The only thing I'll share is if you haven't been to my website, it's www.trishaforwisconsin.com. My name is spelled TRICIAFOR. Wisconsin is spelled out. So trishaforwisconsin.com. If you're on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. I update it regularly. I'm getting all over the district, and really enjoy getting out and meeting people and hearing concerns and seeing the excitement that, getting in a room and feeling that excitement of this is our opportunity. We are going to flip this seat. So that page is, if you go in the search bar, Trisha Zunker for Wisconsin, will pull up my Facebook page. I'm on Twitter. The handle is Trisha4WI. And begrudgingly, I'm on Instagram. I'm trying to figure it out. If anybody's on Instagram, it's Trisha4WI again. Well, I want to respect your time. If anybody wants to stick around and talk, I am going to get on the road probably about 8 o'clock. I am a single mom. I want to get home to my son. He's going to be sleeping, but it's a drive to Wausau. So thank you so much.